Welcome to the Liberty Lobbyist, home education activist, Doris Hohensee. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, so you have been doing this much longer than I have, and you know more about home education laws in New Hampshire, I think, than anybody. You have just a better overall understanding of the history, and I want to get into that. But before we get into that, I want to start with your personal journey. And when did you start homeschooling your children and why?
1986. I have 6 kids, and the oldest, he was a handful. I didn't know how to manage him. And then I read in the paper that you can do this thing called homeschooling. So I just said, wow, I couldn't put him in school. Nobody would be there to answer all his questions. He was just bothering me nonstop. Even my mother didn't know how to handle him. He was just a very big handful. So I decided that we could do homeschooling. And from 86 to 90, we were fine. We didn't have any law. We didn't have any regulations. We had manifest education hardships, and they had some rules. So essentially, I told my district that you can figure out whatever you want. These are guidelines. Guidelines are not, they're flexible. So we had a nice arrangement. They came to my house. They met my child. They offered me a program in their gifted learning, whatever, on the first visit because my child liked math and was showing him how to do it. I mean, it wasn't very complicated, and so they didn't feel like the child was at risk, and they left me alone. There was no testing.
That's very interesting because my understanding was, well, you had to prove educational hardship to the government to be able to be given permission during those days to home educate. Is that not
No,
true?
no, no. The manifest education hardship just changed 4 or 5 times. Way back when, it was just guidelines for home education or guidelines for any, I guess, different type of program other than the norm. So we didn't have to register. We didn't have to test. We didn't, I just had one kid at the time that was homeschooling. And the person that came out later became a superintendent, and he had one son about this exactly the same age. So when he asked my whatever 6-year-old, because I had 3 public school teachers on the block, and they reported me the first day.
Oh
So
my.
he comes over and he asked them to do, what kind of math are you doing? It was 3-digit multiplication. So he picked an easy one, something times 300. And he says, okay, you did a good job on that. Let's do a hard one. So he did it. And so there was no problem. A first grader doing 3-digit multiplication,
Right.
he just liked math. So we were done. We were fine. And then HSLDA came along with this bill. And I just decided, if I can't fight back, nobody can. Because I can go up there. My kids aren't at risk. I'm not somebody that they can intimidate or somebody they can
Right.
show you're not doing well. And it turned out that I had my last 2 kids, they didn't read till they were 9. They would have
Interesting.
been pulled, but they did just fine.
Now,
So
so what prompted the legislation in 1990? Because I was always informed that that was the legalization of homeschooling, because before that, it really wasn't legal. Um, it, it, and that's always what I've read and what I've been
yeah,
told about. So, what prompted legislation in 1990?
there was a family in Mount Vernon who cut a deal with the district, promised to do a certain test, and then reneged on the promise. They brought them to court. The family didn't like that, so they moved.
Okay.
So the district didn't like that, preparing for a course, and then the family just leaves. They came to my neighborhood, as a matter of fact. So what they decided is they wanted a statewide net. And that's what Senator Disnard said on the elevator to his Senate colleagues. With this bill, we can legislate and win against homeschoolers. Because before, they could just go from town to town and escape. We can't have that.
Right.
Now, the family was nice. I mean, they had, I don't know, half a dozen kids or more, maybe even more than I did. But they jeopardized it for the whole state. And then there was like a year's period where they were trying to talk with rewriting those rules and figuring it out. And then HSLDA just wrote this wonderful piece of garbage. And there was 500 people sitting in Reps Hall, and they came in with a last minute draft to change it. So I had no input on the bill.
Right. So
I
let's
didn't even
talk
know
about
what
what
it
the
was.
so let's talk about what that legislation then in 1990 that passed and became law was.
It was notification, like I had to give you my curriculum. And I
Mhm.
told people that were worried about it, I go, don't, later, it's like, well, you give them to you in September, but you may change it in November. So it's kind of pointless, but you give them
Sure.
something, they look at it, and then they acknowledge it, which is approval process. They
Right.
also had, if any other concerns, they could bring you in. They didn't have to give you an acknowledgement if they had other reason to believe that there would be a problem. Like maybe you had a history with the district, who knows? So that was censorship of the program. Then you had to have your portfolio, you had to do your assessments, and they had to be commensurate with your age and ability. And if it was a standardized test, you had to meet or exceed the 40th percentile. So
Yes.
you had to be better than 40% of the children taking this test. That's inequitable.
Yes. And
The
and
kids
public
that
school
aren't doing well
students
need
and
the help the
private school
most.
students have no such requirement.
Right, now we don't, but, then you could have a portfolio review. Now, if they didn't like you didn't make the 40th percentile, they could put you on probation for a year, and if you didn't pull out of it, then you get terminated. Now, do they ever terminate anybody else? And all these
Right.
these standards are
Are they
vague and
terminating public
ambiguous.
schools?
Yeah, hardly.
Yeah.
So I just walked up to every time I went to the legislature, I go, these are unconstitutional. This is why I'm not complying. I've got 6 kids. They weren't all homeschooling at the time, but I'm just not going to do it. And then after it passed, I was on the coalition. Half the board walked out because it was understood that we were going to work on making it better. And the leader of the group broke all the bylaws and just said that no, we're holding fast to this perfect law.
I began being homeschooled in New Hampshire in 1998, and I remember my mother's biggest fear was this letter of intent, right? Where
Yeah.
you were asking for approval, and so she was very worried about this. And yes, you had to detail your curriculum. I will say, we knew one other person who homeschooled at the time. We had never met another homeschooler,
Hmm.
and that mother helped her through it, and basically was like, you need to be as vague as humanly possible. This is kind of a
Yeah.
game. You're playing a game here. And so she did get through that, and it was the same thing. And the law was pretty much the same. And then my entire, childhood. And in those days, even especially the year-end review, we started doing standardized tests pretty quickly. But um, getting a teacher to even want to do a portfolio review was very
Yeah,
difficult.
there used to be a list of people that you could go to. They had to
Yeah.
be certified or a retired private school teacher.
Yeah.
One time, my friend was a public school teacher. She was certified. They wouldn't let her certify her kids. I go, there's nowhere in the law that says she
You
can't.
can't do your own children. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
so I
wild.
got them to allow it. But then in Hudson, there was a family that didn't get their acknowledgement, and they were subpoenaed to court. And the poor lady's like, I don't want to tell my husband and upset him. He works so hard. I go, you have to tell him. I said, I'll go with you, but you have to tell him. So he gets in there and they're like, no, 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 she can't go in. She's not an attorney. She's just an advocate. So the judge called me in because they were like snowed and they didn't really know what they were doing. I had them pick up the Hudson public school curriculum. I knew it would pass. So we got it passed immediately. And then the DCYF said, oh, but you don't know how to implement it. It's not in the law.
Well, correct. Did you
So we
ever,
were out of there.
because you were refusing to comply with the 1990 law, did you have any issues with the state?
Never. I
Really?
Half the community was underground. And I mean that seriously. And not everybody got up on, a microphone and said, hey, I don't comply, come after me. The
Yeah.
first year I wrote a legal brief and I sat down with Governor Merrill and I said, this is why I think it's unconstitutionally vague, it's inequitable, it's this, it's that.
Yeah.
I go, leave me alone, I'll leave you alone. You take me to court, I'll take down your law. He's like, it was obvious. I mean, I don't know if he was an attorney or not, but it was obvious. So he left me alone
Oh, well,
and
that's
we were
that's
fine.
excellent. So let's
But
talk about the legal changes after that. When was the next time that the law was uh, substantively changed? Was it that 2012?
Dawn Lincoln took out the censorship part. So you just notified and got acknowledged without all the censorship of your curriculum. I didn't oppose the concept, but I opposed the fact that we're piecemealing, making the shackles more comfortable so we keep them longer.
Mm. And that's well, we'll get there, but that's sort of where we are right now. And okay, so then what was the next piece? Was that
That
fair?
was the first piece, and then Jara Hole's bill in 2012. I sat down with Laura Jones. She wrote up a beautiful bill. I think it was House Bill 595. And after we got the supermajority in 2010, there were two bills. There was Laura's bill and Jim Parison's bill from the Christian Home Educators of New Hampshire.
Mhm.
That one was written by HSLDA, and that one created a lovely misdemeanor for negligent homeschoolers. So we had to simultaneously try to kill that one and then support Laura's. And she was a state rep from Rochester. She was there for a couple terms. She was wonderful and a homeschooler of three. And we had an attorney from Connecticut come up and testify on her behalf. She also taught me a lot. She's still working, Deb Stevenson. She's got I think it's National Home Educators Legal Defense, sort of the non-HSLDA national group. She
Okay.
was just a mother. She got a law degree and she's been working, to keep education above water.
Did that bill pass?
No, Laura's bill did not. It got to study. Parison's bill went to study. But then the next year, for some reason, we just did a new one with JR and it came through. And it wasn't because they believed that the constitutional arguments were valid. I mean, there was a lovely lady from Londonderry saying, oh, we have to pass this because they have an axe hanging over their head. They could be put on probation or terminated if they can't seek help, if they need help with reading or with math. And we want to help them. Why should they have to hide the problems they're having? And it got through.
Okay. And what that bill did was it made the letter of intent one time, correct? A single time?
No, no, I don't know if it was, well, yeah, maybe it was one time, but the big thing was the assessment.
Yes.
I said, look the public schools don't share their test results. These are private documents. We will test and put it in our back pocket. And I
Yes.
used that term. And I said, if we needed to get on a sports team, we might take it out of our back pocket. Otherwise, that's where it stays.
Mhm. And
And
yes,
they
I was actually surprised when I had a child and we always intended to homeschool. And I think she was like an infant when I started researching what the current laws were. And I was like, oh, okay, well, things are getting better. And in that, so previously the law was that you had to keep a portfolio and then you'd have a few choices of year-end assessment and you had to
Yeah.
send those in. This made it so that yes, you just keep those documents for your own record. So I always say it's like we have mandates, but they're not mandates because no one knows about them. And frankly, I know tons of people who don't follow them at all. Um,
Right. But the problem is if you go to court, they can subpoena them. And if you don't have them, you're automatically educational neglect because the law says you should be doing portfolios and this,
yes,
that, and the other thing. If you
yes,
don't have them, then clearly you're a bad person.
yes. And that is the difference is that you need all these records and documentation to prove your innocence to your government, right?
Right.
So,
Which is backwards.
correct. And then the most recent change that I remember, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, was that we took away that 40% like threshold. There was no like requirement that they had to, I was in office then, that they had to, make a certain amount of improvement each year. And therefore
I
it made
think
it,
that went at the same time because what would a 40th percentile do if it's in your back pocket?
technically it was still there. I remember
Oh, okay.
this was 2021 or 2022 because I was
Okay.
in office then. It was still there, even though you're keeping it in your back pocket. And it's like, again, no child who goes to public school has to prove this
No.
or that, and then because otherwise they get taken away from the public
The
schools. I
public
mean, can
schools
you
would shut down
imagine?
by now. I mean, how many schools are 100% over the 40th percentile?
You can't any.
I don't know, not too
I
many.
don't think any.
No.
All right, so that kind of leads us up to today. And you have been, and I have been helping with HB 1268 here in New Hampshire that did just ought to pass with amendment out of the House Education Committee today.
On
I
party lines.
on party lines. I watched, you were there. I was watching remotely. I just never understand, like, the Democrats spent so much time discussing this bill only to vote against it. I never understand the wasting time thing.
But they
Um,
wanna show that they love homeschoolers and that their constituents can vote for them. But then they have these little problems.
oh,
First,
you
they didn't know what exigent meant, like an emergency situation. That's
mhm,
under 595, RSA 595 about warrant search.
mhm.
So if there's an emergency situation, you might get a warrant. But other than that, the bill says you can't come into somebody's house just on an anonymous tip.
Yes, so let's dive into the specifics of this bill, because I believe this will give parents probably the strongest protections against their government, probably of any state in the country when it comes to home
Mhm.
education.
Yes.
And I'm very, very excited about it. It removes all of the requirements. There will be no notification requirement, no portfolio requirement, no year-end assessment requirement. I keep saying we're uncaging the homeschoolers. Now, unfortunately, they don't all seem to want to like walk through that door themselves. Now that we're opening the door, I'm hoping that what they don't do is shut the door on the rest of us and leave us in there. But
They feel
they're-
like they're in free fall. They're
yeah,
used
so it
to the
removes all those
shackles, and
requirements,
if they
but it
get rid of
also
them, what are they gonna do?
right. We'll get into that, but it also really flips and creates a whole bunch of different protections for parents. Can you go into that?
Well, there's the presumption of innocence, the fact that you're assumed just because you're homeschooling, they can't use that as a presumption against you. Because you don't have the records, that's not a presumption against you. If they go to a court of law, they've got to produce the information. You don't have to produce evidence against yourself. I
Yes.
mean, normally that's never allowed, but in homeschoolers, it's always been allowed. So where are they going to get the information? And if there's a not a good faith report, you have grounds for charging them and getting compensation for legal fees.
Yes.
So if you, and they just can't take an anonymous report and then attack you. They have to have substance. And where are they going to get the substance? So unless you provide it, their job is a little bit harder. They have to know, maybe by watching your kid, I mean, somehow prove that he's completely illiterate, completely, out of control. Where are they going to get that information? So it puts the parent back in the driver's seat.
It does. It makes it really it clarifies that parents have a right to homeschool their
Yes.
child. That is their innate God-given right. And
Yes.
it's not it moves from a permissive model, right,
A
into
privilege, yeah. A
yeah.
government privilege with
Mhm.
regulations. And that's what we always said. I told the underground, I go, once you comply in any way, shape, or form, you're genuflecting to the state saying, yes, you have authority over my home program.
Yeah.
So once you give them authority, then you have to do all the hoops that they want.
Yes.
If you don't, and that's why everybody stood out of it, they've got to prove that they even have jurisdiction over your right to home educate your child. And they never did. I don't remember anybody that was taken to court because they didn't comply. The only person I had to help was the person that got they were censored. They didn't like her curriculum.
Interesting, interesting. Um, so the bill has been the most publicly discussed bill I think I have
Ever.
ever seen ever. I've been doing this a while. I do it on a bunch of different subjects. I've never seen anything quite like it. The
Right.
sponsor has been very open with the public.
Yes.
And
Despite many attacks.
I know. So let's kind of rewind. I mean, I don't mind calling it out, but obviously there's a national group called the Coalition for Responsible Home Education, and they are, in my opinion, an anti-homeschooling group. Despite their name,
It's a
they are
foundation funded. They got $100,000 from the Rockefeller Foundation. So this is not a grassroots homeschooler group.
no, no.
This
They are
is
an
a few
anti-homeschooling group, in my
very, and it
opinion,
was well
100%.
funded. Yes.
And
And
they
they've,
like to pretend that they are
yes.
that they are actually homeschoolers. I'm sure there are a few of them actually who are homeschoolers,
No, I
but
think they
overall that
were.
is
I
not
think they're
the intent.
disgruntled. I think they had a bad experience, whether they didn't get enough socialization, whatever their problem was. And now they're in it to attack others, and they go state to
and take
state, and
away
they're
their freedom. And so that is a group that is opposing this bill, but I would expect them to
but
oppose.
this is the first time they've ever reared their head in New Hampshire. I've never heard of them here before.
I think they're fairly new. I don't think they're that old of a group.
But they didn't spring up in New Hampshire. I don't think there's any New Hampshire members. It's a
No.
foundation coming and attacking our state, just
Yes.
like they attacked Tennessee and just like they just
Yes.
attacked Illinois. And
Yes.
they won in Illinois, and they're going to keep attacking because they're well funded.
Absolutely. They're opposing this bill again. I would expect them to. The issue is that we have a local homeschooling group that claims to be a home education freedom group, and they are opposing this bill as well. Now, at the beginning, I believe it was because they seemed hurt that they were not asked to.
They were asked over the summer, they were given a copy, they gave feedback. For some reason, they feel that they weren't treated right,
Mhm.
and they got very angry,
Aggressive.
and they wanted a public apology, and they wouldn't work with a sponsor unless they had a significant role.
Mhm.
So I'm like, no, we just want to get this over the finish line. I don't care who does the victory laps. Let's just improve the situation for homeschooling. No, I can't do that. So to me,
There
that's not a group anymore.
there
I don't
are certain subjects that I think, and not to toot my own horn, but that I think that I'm, one of the more informed activists on. Okay.
right.
And I have never, ever felt hurt by a bill being submitted that I had not read in advance. Ever.
No,
I can't
no.
even imagine.
There's 1,000 of them.
Yes.
Of course you haven't read some of them.
I cannot imagine. You don't need to consult with me. It is not a matter of who gets the credit. It's not a matter of who helped write what. It is a matter of, do we get good policy passed at the end
Right.
of the day? That is all that matters. And there
Exactly.
were a lot of egos involved here. And now ultimately they have landed. I don't really know, actually. They came into the hearing saying that they were
Opposed.
neutral. No,
Now,
neutral.
the two posts that they had, the articles, one was unsigned, the second was signed, but they opposed it. They said it was unamendable, unfixable, withdraw it, and they've been very hostile.
Very hostile, and I
I've
kept
never
thinking that
seen
we
a
would get
group
them
so
there,
hostile.
and we just can't seem to get them there. Where do you think that they are right now? Because they're still opposed to the bill, despite saying that they were neutral in the hearing and repeatedly saying that they were opposing the bill in their emails to their list and everything. But what are their issues? If you could boil them down, what are they?
Well, they did have an issue over the disabled children.
Mhm.
They wanted that removed completely, and on a gut level, I knew we had to keep it because we've
Have to
always
be.
had a
So just
problem.
to clarify for people who are listening, what it said was that you have the right to homeschool your child, even
Right.
those with disabilities, right?
Right, and they clarified it with language that they like, so that issue is put to bed.
Yes, they did actually use their language,
Yeah,
which is like, you
regardless
have
of,
the right to homeschool your child regardless of their
yes,
ability. Again, I think those are semantics, and in many other places in New Hampshire law, it says the previous language, which I was
right,
informed was othering disabled children, which
right.
again, I don't legislate vibes and feelings, folks. Okay. The law doesn't care about your feelings. It just cares
But
about
we did
reality.
take out the statutory references that were in there
Yes.
because
Yes.
those, if you went there, it was a disabled child as evaluated by the district, and we
Yes.
didn't want to go to the district. We didn't want to be evaluated, so the statutory references had to immediately go, and they
Yes.
went.
No, you were absolutely right about that. But then I was fine with the language then. But anyway, I agree.
We
Have
gave them what they wanted.
something in there, because I believe that there really have been issues, and it could be issues where, let's say you have your child in public school and the public school evaluates them and determines that they're, I don't know, dyslexic. And then you say, okay, I want to withdraw my child and homeschool them. And they say, well, no, you're not capable of doing
They're
that.
now saying mental health is dyslexia. I was at another bill for the MTSSB, and they were saying that dyslexia is no longer a disability, it's a mental health problem. Well, it is the
Well, that's a
mind.
whole other rabbit hole.
I know, so I'm not going there. But the other
Right,
big
that's
issue
okay.
they
Interesting.
had was notification. They don't understand it.
Yes, so
And
let's dive into the notification piece. Why is it that this group is so intent on keeping their notification requirement?
because it's a government permission slip that they're good people and they think they need it. They need to be affirmed that they're good people, and they can show this piece of paper to anybody who comes knocking. It says, you might not be a good person. But what they don't understand, it is a approval process. It is you notify and then you get approved because you've done your notification.
Yes.
That's an approval process. And they keep saying, no, 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 no. There's nothing to approve. Yes, there is. If you don't have it, you go to court. The first thing the judge said, you're not acknowledged, your program wasn't approved.
Yes, that's right.
And
They
HSLDA told us over and over and over again that there would never be misconstrued as approval because the Bible doesn't allow the state to approve your program. So we made sure that wouldn't happen.
they believe that homeschoolers, if they haven't declared that they're homeschooling, right, and therefore the government knows that they are homeschooling, that they would somehow be um, subject to truancy and compulsory education laws. This is what I've been told by them over and over again. What
But
they are
that's not true.
missing is that the bill now presumes that your child is homeschooling if they are not in a school. So
Yeah.
therefore, you are not subject to truancy or compulsory education. And I have repeated this over and over and over, and they are
Mhm.
still hung up on it. And at the end of the day, I just sit back and I think, yes, these are like, this is Stockholm syndrome at this
It
point.
is. They're conditioned and groomed to be slaves. And if they could only get the declaration notarized, they wanted that in the bill. Just notarize the declaration and then we'd be safe. We'd have our government permission slip.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So listen to this, folks, because this one cracks me up. And I've brought this up with a lot of my homeschooling friends, and they literally laugh because it's so
Yeah.
absurd. They want that a parent, would write their own permission slip. I intend to homeschool my child. They go and get it notarized, and then they just keep it for themselves. And I'm like, and what does that do? What
Well,
is that?
I told them if you're going to do it, use the declaration because it's a state recognized document. If it's valid enough to get funding from the
That's
state,
not what they were asking for, though. They were literally just asking you, and as if the notarization is notarizing a document is
it's
not
just
proof that
identity.
you are educating your child.
No.
That's insane.
No, and then there was a big war over the certification of completion. Again, they're not giving a transcript. They're not saying you're an A, B, or C student. They're not even saying what you covered, just that you finished your program. So if you need to get to the military, if you need to, whatever your problem is.
What she's referring to, for those who don't know, there was a section in rules, administrative rules, that we brought into law because we're ending all the administrative rules, that gives permission to the Department of Education that if a parent wants an official sort of certification of completion of a home education program, the parent can send all of that information into the Department of Education.
It's not a lot of information. It's just the name of the parent, the name of the child,
they
and a
send that,
date.
and then all they do is take that information and put it on a letterhead, essentially, okay, and say, like,
Yes.
here you go, this is it. They are not certifying. They are nothing. They're just putting the
No.
parent's information on a letterhead. Period. The end. That's it. And they are up in arms about this, as if
Because we want it self-certified. We don't want the state to
good.
do
You can
that.
absolutely can. It's optional. It's completely
You
optional.
can do that on your own. But if the military says we need state recognition for it, why should I deny it? Because somebody else wants to deny it to them? I don't see the reason.
Well, and then I got told, well, then why don't we make everything optional? Like, why can't we have an optional portfolio? You do. You can keep a portfolio. You
Yeah.
can write a letter. You can get it notarized. You can do all those things. We don't need
You can notify with a notarization. Make your own.
Go for it. We don't need law, folks, and everyone needs to understand this. You don't need laws for self-governance. You do actually need a law to make a directive and an allowance for a state bureaucracy. Yeah, you actually do need a law for that, okay? But self-governance seems to be such a difficult concept for people. So, Doris, what do we do to help people break out of their shackles?
I think it'll take a year or two with a new law, and then they're going to calm down, and the new people coming in are going to say, great. And then the whole trauma is going to be over because they fought us every step of the way to get rid of probation and termination. They fought us.
When was this? That was the 2012, right?
2012. We took from 1990 to 2012 to get rid of that albatross on our back.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they fought.
And homeschoolers were fighting that. We did manage to get it done. Okay. Hopefully we can get this done despite, a couple, frankly, lead balloons.
And all the homeschooling groups were the worst. They always came out with the safety, the status quo, don't change anything, because
Yeah.
they read the story of a bill that was written by Howard Richmond in Pennsylvania when HSLDA wrote their home ed law a couple years before ours. So they read the book and they created a bill, and that was their legacy. Don't destroy it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We were destroying their legacy.
I had actually heard from some people, again, my goodness, this bill is going to open the cage. You can stay in the cage, okay? You're not required to walk out of it, but you can't close the door and relock it with everybody else still inside. But I have heard people say, well, if we do something this radical and this becomes law, then we're just painting a target on our backs that then they'll want to come in and regulate us even more. Folks, the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. We don't have to make steps forward or not for there to be attacks against our liberty. That will continue to happen.
Yes.
And we will be there. You and I will be there.
Yeah. But they also said that DCYF is overreaching. Okay, let's fix it. Do a bill next year. Fix that. Oh no, we need it there to protect from the bad people.
Yeah.
So they want DCYS to sort people out from the good and the bad. Yep. But then they don't want to be bad, so they can't figure out if they're helping or hurting DCYF. I mean, it's hard to work with them if they don't know which direction they're going. But by all means, they can introduce legislation and fix DCYF next year.
Yeah, that would be great.
Or compulsory attendance, whatever they want to fix.
That would be interesting too. I know they continuously act as if we're the only compulsory education state in the country. That is not the case.
No, it's all 50.
It's all 50 states. And yet 13 have no, letter of intent requirements. So
and they survive. But they were trying to point out that there's problems. And we said, no, there's no more abuse cases for relaxed versus moderate versus strenuous home education laws. But we don't know if there's unfounded ones. Well, go do a search. But we know we can't proceed unless we know. They're afraid. They're afraid.
I expect these anti-liberty arguments to come from my enemies. Okay, I do. I expect it to come from the left. All right, and I heard them today in committee. Okay, I expect that. I get it. When it comes from my own side, I'm baffled by it. If you are home educating your child, you are already stepping outside of the norm. And so I was shocked to see the level of statism by people who are already doing something that is against the norm of society.
This has been that way for, 36 years? Mm-hmm. They have been this awful to us. To the people who want to be free, they have been this awful. I mean, the first, like the coalition, we wanted them to support homeschooling no matter how you approach it. Oh, no, we can't. Now it's on their website. They changed. I mean, there's such a thing as unschoolers. Yeah, oh, sure. No, that's terrible. We can't have that.
My goodness. Well,
they're very judgy.
Incredibly, it's been eye-opening for me, but I made one more post, I think it was on Friday, and I said I'm not commenting on this bill again until it gets voted on. I said, but my goodness, I am going to do everything in my power to drag all of you kicking and screaming over the finish line.
Yeah,
to freedom, if that's what it takes.
Well, they were very upset about the EFA people having equal access to their public schools.
That's the Education Freedom Account. So it's like our version of like a school voucher program here in New Hampshire. And that, by the way, that isn't related to this bill. In fact,
but it was in the bill.
Well, yes, I understand that.
They blew a gasket. The homeschoolers that were there blew a gasket over it because the voucher people, the EFA people, get adequacy money from the state, 3, 4, 5,000. So they should pay for equal access with that money. And that was the original understanding. But then the public schools were discriminatory, like they were charging a lot more for the EFA students than they get reimbursed by the state for the homeschoolers. They get 0.15% of adequacy, which is, very small amount. So if they made it equitable, that would be fine. But they absolutely did not want these voucher people to get it for free. Like that was a
I'm
crusade.
aware. I'm aware. But the whole point of the bill, by the way, I don't know if you know this, but the reason why the sponsor put the bill in to begin with is because, frankly, it was the same group of homeschoolers. And I know you're not a big fan of voucher programs either.
No.
I have my reservations about them, but it was the same group who they never want to be lumped in with them. And in New Hampshire, there are separate legal tracks for
Yes.
those who are unfunded homeschoolers and those who are education freedom account students. And I'm a big fan of keeping them separate. And the point of this bill was actually to make them more separate, right? We're
Yes.
leaving the
Well,
regulations
they also
on
said
those
that
who accept
we
vouchers.
had more regulations than they do. We have to keep a portfolio even if we're not using that as an evaluation point, whereas the EFAs are like, here, you're off. Here's your money. Do what you please. These are the subjects. We'll see you at the end of the year.
Right. So, but that is that was the whole point of the bill was let's create a bigger buffer zone, right? We're going
Right.
to take away all the regulations from those who do not take any money from government, right? And we're going to leave regulations on those who
Yeah.
do. And I'm totally in favor of it. You know, when the sponsor told me that she wanted to do this, I said, yeah, let's do it. I'm an unfunded homeschooler and I want my full freedom because that's
Yeah.
my right. And
She's the best sponsor we've had for a bill so
yes.
far, other than, Laura Jones did a really great bill too. But
Mhm.
in terms of people that really want us to be free and really have our interests at heart, these set of current sponsors are great.
Yep. Shout out to Representative
Yeah.
Kristen Noble. I want to have her on the show actually. All right, we'll land the plane there. Thank you for coming on today. I really really appreciate it, and I appreciate all of your activism.
Well, thank you. And you've been at it too, so it helps. You are one of the groups that supported this bill.
We certainly are. Rebuild
Yeah.
NH is like very happy to support this bill. We are all current or former homeschoolers, and
Yes,
we're
I know
ready.
that. Very
We'll keep
good homeschoolers. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Good
Bye-bye.
night. That is it for the Liberty Lobbyist. I am Melissa Blasek. You can find me at Melissa Blasek NH or at Rebuild NH on X, or you can email me your questions, comments, concerns, director at rebuildnh.com. Until next time.